I became a psychologist not through any desire for an occupation, but because I was prompted and pushed from my inner self. In my 20s, I did not even know the word psychology, let alone psychotherapy. Yet once I read Jung's autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, I knew this was to be my chosen profession. I firmly believe that counseling and psychotherapy are vocations, callings, rather than normal careers. Therapeutic work is unlike any other activity, except maybe being a priest or pastor. And it takes a certain kind of personality and dedication to stick with it to the point where we understand and love what we do. Those who are unsuited to the work will see clients, but their hearts are not completely in it. They're prone to burnout or going through the motions at a superficial level. Becoming a therapist is challenging, not just because we have to learn complex interpersonal skills, but because we are required to grow as a person. We can help others only if we know how to help ourselves. We're called to become aware of and resolve our own demons, blindness, and psychological flaws. Of course, we cannot do this all at one go. Becoming a true psychotherapist is a long path of trials and self-examination. I've been lucky to have exceptional teachers and mentors. My first therapist, Winifred Rushforth, was when I was an undergraduate student at Edinburgh University. My wife-to-be and I attended her dream group for a year. Winifred was 95 years old and had trained as a psychoanalyst in the 1920s. Her serene presence and penetrating wisdom are still an enduring influence on my life and work. Having inspirational mentors and teachers is of immeasurable value. Hopefully you meet those people in your life, but if not, watch videos of great therapists and read their books. I trained for many years in Ericksonian hypnotherapy, and I'm still amazed by the skill and precision of Milton Erickson's therapeutic work. He's famous for his one-session cures and his ability to evoke unconscious healing through trance, metaphor, and stories. In this video, I'll explore the landmarks and phases of the journey to become a therapist using my own experience. To begin, we have to ask ourselves, why do I want to be a therapist? What guides or calls me to do this work? Here are some common reasons why we may choose this path. Think of why you wanted to become a psychotherapist. How well do these reasons apply to you? So I'm drawn to the work. I want a good career. I want to help people. I want to understand people better. I want to know myself better. The work feels right for me. Each of these reasons has a light and a dark side, strengths and weaknesses, positives and negatives. For instance, if we feel drawn to the work, do we know why? Is it that being a therapist is the right fit for our nature, our personality, and life purpose? Or could there be unconscious motivations of which we are unaware? After some time, I realized that a portion of my reason for being a psychologist came from my difficult family experiences. Growing up was confusing, and I developed a strong need to understand why my family was so unusual. Being a psychotherapist is a good career. However, if you simply want a way to make money, therapy is probably not a great choice. The training is long and difficult, the work is demanding, and we're prone to emotional burnout. Also, as you can only sell your time and expertise, there is a limit to what you can earn. Better to go into business if you want to make lots of money. Being a psychotherapist can also be lonely, and you have to be okay engaging with clients in an office day after day. The desire to help others is essential, but it has to be kept within bounds, or else we quickly become emotionally drained. A better intention is to help others help themselves. Clients are the instigators of their own healing, and we are there to support and guide them, but not directly relieve them of their troubles and suffering. We have to keep honing our understanding of human beings if we wish to be effective therapists, but understanding for its own sake as an intellectual exercise is not therapeutic. Without empathy, feeling, and action, there is no change. Insight is important, but it is only part of the whole. I believe we have to embrace the truth that we are therapists for our own benefit as much as for our clients. The greatest benefit is that we learn about ourselves, gain in self-awareness and self-control. That's not a selfish motive. We're not doing the work solely for ourselves, but our own growth necessarily improves the quality of our work. Self-development is in service of our clients and ourselves. Finally, the work has to fit our individuality. It has to feel right at some deep level. Unless being a therapist suits us and gets easier and more natural with time, we cannot do it for long. We'll lose interest or we'll burn out. Unlike other professions, we therapists can keep working until we're quite elderly, and our work can become more mature and effective as we age. So here are some of the phases of development that I experienced when I was becoming a psychologist. It takes time to become a good psychotherapist. They say we need to practice for 10,000 hours to become expert in anything. That means to become a highly skilled therapist requires about 10 years of practice. While this is often true, research shows that having a good teacher and good training makes a world of difference. With strong motivation and excellent teaching and supervision, you can become a very competent therapist in about 6 to 10 years. When I think of my own experience, after training as a psychologist for 3 years, it took about another 4 years until I really felt I knew what I was doing. This slide suggests the different phases we go through in becoming a therapist. The first phase is the phase of uncertainty. We know that we don't know. So there's a lot of self-doubt and perplexity. Now there's a second phase, which sometimes is there and sometimes isn't. It's called the phase of false confidence. We think we do know, and sometimes we think we do know everything. This is an unrealistic self-belief, and of course we're faking it. The third phase is the phase of competence. We know that we know. There's confidence in our skills and our expertise. And finally, after quite a long period of practice, we can reach the phase of maturity. This is a strange phase because we don't know that we know. In that sense, we kind of become unconscious again of all of our skills, and they become intuitive. But also, we know that we don't know. There's a natural humility that we know that we could keep learning forever. While these phases tend to follow each other, oftentimes with difficult clients, we feel we're going backwards. It's impossible to tell an exact timeline for the different phases, but my experience was that I struggled with anxiety and doubt during the first 3 years of my training. I coasted with false confidence, with bouts of uncertainty, for another 3 or 4 years. Around about 7 or 8 years, I basically felt competent. But actually, some of that was still a little fragile. I don't think I reached maturity until after 30 to 35 years of consistent practice. Why does it take so long? Unlike most professions, what we do requires what I call being and doing skills, skills in relationship building and skills in using techniques. These take time to get fully integrated into our practice. In the next few slides, I'll go over each phase in detail, exploring different aspects of both being and doing. At the beginning, we all experience uncertainty and self-doubt. This is natural, particularly during internship or the first few years of practice. In a session, we easily get thrown off balance by something the client says or the emotions they express, particularly anger and sadness. That's when we're likely to feel de-skilled and even overwhelmed. Because our nervous system can get highly activated, we struggle to be present with a client. Thoughts and feelings intrude on our attention, particularly if we're uncertain if we're doing therapy right. In these situations, we slip into typical ways of relating. For some, it will become passive listeners, waiting for the client to give us a clue to what we should do. For others, we get more talkative and overactive, suggesting lots of activities and offering advice. Our fear is mainly that we will not be helpful or effective, so we overcompensate, each in our own particular way. When we're either too passive or too active, the relationship suffers because we're not adequately tracking the needs and state of the client. In these situations, the client may not feel understood, so they adjust their words and actions to the therapist rather than the other way around. Being overly sympathetic to the client gives an underlying message that they're not strong enough to handle their problems, or that we find their situation overwhelming. Unconsciously, the client may start protecting us from their feelings by holding back. When we're uncertain, our use of technique will reflect that uncertainty. Some of us fall back on well-learned techniques that we will apply in a somewhat formulaic, rigid manner, not adapting them to the client. These techniques are a crutch to lean on when we don't know exactly what to do, but at least we feel we are doing something. Of course, that contributes to a sense of unease that we will be found out, exposed, or a fraud or imposter. So we'll hesitate to tell our supervisors or teachers the whole truth of what happens in a session. I remember my own embarrassment early on when I felt I was not doing therapy right. Only with a very few supervisors whom I trusted completely could I tell even a part of what I was feeling and doing with clients. The phase of false confidence does not happen for everyone. Men are more prone to it than women because they're taught not to show fear or insecurity. So false confidence is a way of defending against being overwhelmed by feelings. Think of it as a mask or veneer that hides the true feelings of confusion and anxiety. As such, it's far more dangerous and potentially harmful than simply accepting our uncertainty. Because of the blocked feelings, the person often appears overly cheerful and sure of themselves, and this misleads the client into thinking they're in good hands. Overconfidence is fake. The person is in their own head thinking about how they appear to others, so they're not present or really engaged. This false persona is often quite fragile, so they tend to be overly controlling in order that nothing cracks their mask of confidence. The client can become fascinated or even enamored by the person's aura of knowing everything, and so they become increasingly passive. The relationship then is imbalanced: active therapist and passive client. False confidence gives the impression that the therapist is the expert and always knows best. So technique tends to be overly rigid and out of touch with the needs of the client. If the false confidence gets really bad, the therapist becomes manipulative and demanding, and the client feels trapped. In some sense, we all have to fake it until we make it. But without realistic humility, we can get lost in a narcissistic facade. The research shows that overconfidence is a major cause of poor therapeutic outcome. So it is much healthier to harbor some self-doubt than to think that we know it all. As we settle into the work, we start to feel more comfortable and relaxed. Because we've had numbers of therapy successes, we've developed realistic confidence in our own ability and find our clients interesting so we can appreciate their uniqueness. Not feeling pressure to perform or be overly helpful, we can take a more measured, thoughtful approach. In the sessions, we've learned to become more present. And when we get distracted, we bring ourselves back quickly to the present and engage fully again. We've listened to a whole range of distressing and disturbing stories, so we are no longer pushed off balance by strong emotions, but can stay calmly empathic with clients as they express their feelings. The relationship is more balanced and real, with times of mutual enjoyment as well as sadness. For some clients, it feels like a collaboration, with each knowing what is expected and a sense of keeping the boundaries clear and consistent without too much effort. We've learned a number of techniques and adjusted them to our own way of working, so we are seldom at a loss of what to do. There's no rush to step into action, as the client determines the pace and progress of therapy. We've learned to be more patient and accepting of what needs to happen and when. The main danger with this phase is self-satisfaction or complacency, not bothering to keep learning and developing as a therapist. As I said previously, it probably took me around 30 years to feel I had reached maturity as a therapist. Doing therapy had become natural and intuitive for me, so I seldom think about what I will or should do. At the same time, though I'm not sure I know what I know, I also am very clear that I do not know everything and have to keep learning and growing, both as a person and as a therapist. This is what I call realistic humility. I find myself intensely interested in every aspect of the client and their life. I do not know what the client needs or what will happen in a session, with a few exceptions. So I'm constantly challenged to be more present and creative, to respond in the moment to whatever that moment requires. I do my best to love and accept my clients in a compassionate, non-demanding way that does not exclude us having difficulties and even open conflicts. I believe the unexpected and unusual are real evidence of inner growth, so I try not to prejudge what should or shouldn't happen. The exceptions are when the client and I decide to do a specific technique, such as EMDR or hypnosis, and even then I'm never sure what I will do or how I will do it. I find therapy ever more exciting and fascinating, but it's still a mystery to me how and why it works as it does. How do we learn as therapists? I believe our clients are our best teachers if we're willing to learn from them. Certain clients have had a powerful effect on my practice. I call these landmark cases, and I'm grateful for all the challenges, struggles, and even disturbance they put me through. Every session and every person is an opportunity to learn something new and different, even if we cannot always put into words what that is. Being in personal therapy is essential at some period of our career. Therapy makes us face our flaws, and we need help getting past some personal blocks. My first experience was in a dream group as a student, but I also participated in a number of other group therapies early in my career. It was not easy for me to find an individual therapist I trusted and respected. I met with a Jungian therapist regularly for a little over 2 years, mostly working on dreams. I also saw a body-oriented therapist and a Hakomi experiential therapist for shorter periods. My own personal growth depends mostly on my spiritual practice. That's certainly been the most helpful and beneficial for me. When we're at a loss how to be or what we need to do with a client, it's of immense help to go inward, quietly contemplate how we need to be. Often we can get inner guidance and support that completely changes our attitude. Journaling and periods of quiet self-reflection can be deeply nurturing. I'm an avid reader and still learn from good books on psychology and philosophy. Nowadays, you can watch or listen to all sorts of excellent therapists on the internet, and I strongly suggest you create your own study plan. Over the years, my experience with therapy trainings has been very mixed. There are good teachers and terrible teachers. I did a lot of courses in my first 10 years. The ones that made most impact were with David Grove on clean language and Francine Shapiro on EMDR. Grove did extraordinary demonstrations, and Shapiro was a wonderful teacher. You can find videos of both of them on YouTube. I don't recall much that I learned from lectures. Most were too theoretical and divorced from reality. Supervision was mixed, some good supervisors and some not good supervisors. I got most from group supervision with my peers. I think of mentors as those figures who made a deep impression on me. Some were therapists, like Winifred Rushforth, and others were simply extraordinary people who carried an aura of compassion and wisdom. These are the kinds of useful principles that I use to guide my work. To me, the process of healing through psychotherapy is still an extraordinary mystery. How is it that my words, simple vibrations in the air or over a computer, can make a difference to a person's life and experience? I'm never exactly sure what causes that difference, so I embrace not knowing and never being certain. I tend to be impatient and easily fall into lecture mode, so I know to practice being quiet inside in order to counteract the overactivity of my mind. Mindfulness and self-awareness have to be nurtured and developed over a lifetime. And eventually, we can get comfortable with simply closing our eyes during a session, going inward, and asking ourselves, what should I do next? Every client is doing what they can to heal and grow, but they've got stuck or blocked. If I pay attention, notice the roots of stuckness, do what I can to help, and then let go of the outcome, things tend to shift of their own accord. The universe is always changing. All nature goes through cycles of growth, stability, and transformation. I see it all around me, in my garden and in my clients. I trust it, and I trust my clients to be a natural part of nature and to heal in their own way. Compassion is a great healer. It's the foundation of every religion and ethical path. The more we learn to love ourselves and love others, the more we are a force for good. But compassion must always have boundaries and limits, or else it can become sick and even destructive. So we learn to care for clients, but let go of them between sessions, forget them and their suffering until we see them again. Most of all, we have to accept that we're human, with all the wonder, creativity, potentials, and flaws that entails. Therapy is a path and a vocation that transforms not only our clients, but ourselves for the better. We should be endlessly grateful that we are able to walk this path. In the next 20 years, the practice of therapy will see many innovations. Some are already happening. Online therapy, for instance, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, psychotherapy using virtual reality, neurologically based therapies, and others yet to be imagined. The foundation of therapy, relationship, compassion, presence, and attention will not change. So we should try not to get distracted by bright and shiny techniques, but continually ask ourselves, how can I become a better person? And what can I do to be a better therapist that is in accord with my inner nature? As a therapist, our mental and physical well-being is our most essential resource. We cannot practice effectively if we're sick, tired, or emotionally unstable. That means eating, sleeping, and exercising well. Of these, sleep is the most important as it directly affects our mental state and ability to concentrate. If we want clients to take care of themselves appropriately, we have to follow the same suggestions. As I said previously, we cannot heal or save our clients. They have to do that for themselves. Even when you know that what they are doing is unhealthy and destructive, it is not your task to take over their lives. Only if a person is actively suicidal, violent, or is harming children do you have the strict responsibility to take control. And even then, be careful not to set in motion processes that do more harm than good. Always get advice and support in those kinds of situations. With some clients, we listen to and witness dreadful life events, violence, sexual abuse, cruelty, and attempted murder. Clients have had terrible things happen to them, and we have to be present to help them heal from the damage and trauma. That work takes its toll. Sometimes we are simply disgusted and horrified by what some human beings do to others, particularly children. So we need to keep a balance inside of the dark and the light, knowing that our clients have tremendous resilience, courage, and hope. So whenever there's an opportunity, help your clients laugh. See the humor in every situation. Appreciate the joy and pleasure are fundamental to our humanity. Some clients are difficult. After a session, we can feel burdened as though we're carrying some energetic force that is not our own. I describe the feeling as sticky, heavy, gloomy, and oppressive, in contrast to a light, bright, cool, optimistic feeling. Once we learn to recognize this kind of energetic contamination, it's important to create simple ways to clear the room and your feelings. Open the windows and doors. Go outside. Jump, dance, sing, meditate, pray. These are some ways therapists clear heavy energy. You need to discover your own ways, ones that suit you and your situation. Finally, we're only human, so treating ourselves with compassion and care is exactly what we deserve. Do unto yourself as you would do to others. Acknowledge and forgive your flaws and mistakes with the intention of doing better in future. Guilt and blame are not useful or healthy, so let them go. Be kind, be loving.